Good evening. November the 1st. Can you believe it? This is Granny coming to you on YouTube. Yay! Exciting weekend. Exciting to be here. Congratulations. Shout out to the Spartans for what they did this past weekend. I wasn't able to attend the game, but I did watch it. Tonight we're going to do something very special. Granny got bling bling on again. It's my hat. I got a second hat I can change into um, tonight because I'm so eternal grateful. And I know you get tired of hearing that. But what I'm going to share with you tonight is a true story. Honestly, I want you guys to see this so you'll know that Granny's not lying. I have a copy of my birth certificate. Tonight, we're dealing with chapter 3, and it just says, no name on my first birth certificate. I don't know if you guys can see this, but this was the first birth certificate that Granny got. And so tonight's reading will explain to you the importance of why I feel extra special. Got my crown up here, got my silver glasses on, got my pearls on, and we're going to read. This we're going to have to do in two parts. Again, I can't thank YouTube enough, Facebook enough, Instagram enough for giving me this platform to just share Granny's old hands. I hope you stay with me. Again, we're going to do this in two sessions because chapter 3 is long, and it just simply says, no name on my first birth certificate. And this was April of 2005. I'm going to try not to go off the book because, again, it's a long chapter. Validation can be an important thing for people who have suffered with many of life's unfortunate experiences and lived to overcome the crushing cruelties of low self-esteem, inferiority, and depression. Unbeknownst to the world, I have superstitiously searched for most of my adult life for someone to validate me. I'm going off script. I spent most of my life looking for somebody to tell me that I was okay. And it costs when you do that. Okay? I hid behind smiles, laughter, and tears. But now, as I learn to fight my way out of this bondage, I no longer need outside validation. I'm learning to love me and accept the person I am becoming. I believe for these reasons that it's a good time to share a little bit about my personal journey and some of the circumstances of how I entered into this. Several years ago, I got the bright idea to apply for my passport. Why not? I thought. One of my lifelong dreams had always been to visit other countries. If and when the opportunity arrived, I realized I needed to have valid documentation to travel. In other words, I needed a passport, guys. Granny needed a passport. In the process of gathering the necessary documents needed, I discovered I didn't have a copy of my own birth certificate. I had copies of all of my 8 siblings' birth certificates, but not of mine. I'm finna go off script. You already know, and I hate to be repeating things, but um, we went to foster care in the early 1965. And as a result, personal documents, our personal effects were scattered. And so our mom was still living at the time, as was our father, but due to circumstances you'll learn later on in the book, our mother had been taken out of the home and placed in a tuberculosis center. So the state came in and gathered all of us siblings. Our things got scattered. And so as I got older, I did have an aunt living, aunt or aunt, and she was able to gather some of my mom's personal documents. And when I got older, she sent them to me. This is the God heavens knows truth. Everybody had a birth certificate in the pack except Celestine. And I didn't know it at the time because there was no need for me to have a birth certificate at the time. Okay? I must stop now for a station identification break to inform you how all this transpired. I had the privilege of being born to two wonderful people during the early 50s. Many of us African American children born during that era really didn't understand a lot of things, but I learned early that things were different from my family. My dad had served his country during World War II. He possessed many medals, lapel buttons, and was issued an honorable discharge from the military for his services. He was a gifted, self-taught auto mechanic. For many years, he was employed by one of the largest automobile dealerships in Gary, Indiana. When my dad passed away in March of 1984, he was honored with a flag and a full-fledged military ceremony. My dad now lays to rest peacefully in Battle Creek, Michigan at Fort Custer. My mom was a high school graduate with a passion for higher education. She had the ability to engage us children in conversations about the world and opportunities that we could benefit from if we stayed focused, paid attention in school. My mom, my mom talent was talented in sharing stories that fascinated us about people, places, and the world in general. We spent many hours in the public library enjoying books, books, and more books. With that said, how then does a person from a two-parent home have a birth certificate with no name on it? Like most African Americans families during those times, jobs were difficult to restore. The Civil Rights Act of 1957 was introduced in Eisenhower's presidency, and it was the act that kickstarted the civil rights legislation and programs that eventually led to the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Voting Act. Many changes had begun to occur in my family during this particular time. My dad was unable to obtain decent work, and he was forced to leave the home because the system wouldn't allow him to remain. In order for my mom to qualify to get the free government cheese, the flour, the canned meat, that good old powdered milk, and a few dollars allowed her from the welfare system, my dad had no other choice but to leave and take a break. During that time, a lot of things occurred, and if you know your history and your family has shared things with you, I can't say it enough. I came from good stuff. I came from a two-parent home. My dad worked. My mom was kind of like, she ran things. She really did. And as long as my mom was up and running and healthy, my dad was there producing and doing what he should have done. When our mother got sick and the state moved her to that tuberculosis place, my dad, I'm sorry, our dad fell apart. And you would say, are you making excuses? No, I'm not making excuses for him. Our mother was 41 when she passed, 9 kids. My dad was left, I don't know if I could say a state of shock or just didn't know what to do. So he stopped doing. Okay? But I came from good stuff. Came from good stuff. My dad was unable to obtain decent work and he was forced to leave the home. I told you that. My mom, with 9 children, had to survive with welfare being the only source of income until my dad could find another job and return. I can vividly remember thinking back then, why all these trips to the library and we have a daddy in the home 1 month and the next month he's gone, taking a break. This lady still read to us. We still went to the library and our dad had been removed from the home. And back then I'm thinking, something's wrong with the picture. But you didn't dare voice your opinion like these kids do today. You just went along with the program. During some of those difficult times, my mom discovered a white pastor in our neighborhood whose church had a clothing surplus store. He would allow her entrance into his church from time to time to pick up clothes for us. Also, the owner of a small corner store allowed her a line of credit to charge food when we ran low, just before the government surplus would arrive. So perspective we are as children that I knew in all of this, my mom never totally blamed my dad. She loved him and she knew his suffering was much deeper than most of her immediate family could ever understand. I'm taking a break. Until my mom, this is a true story, in December of 1965, the year they took us, my mom fell in the bathroom at her mom's house. She got out of the tuberculosis center, had made preparations to get her children back, and she fell in the bathroom, hurt her head, and my mom went into a coma. She was in a coma from December of 1965 until March of 1966. We were told when my mother regained consciousness, the first thing she wanted to do was see our dad. Let my dad know that she didn't blame him for anything because she now knew what had transpired October the 5th, 6th, and 7th of 1965 when the state of Indiana made us wards of the state. If our mom could forgive our dad, I had no right to hold anything against him. I became an adult with kids before I forgave my father. But I thank God that as Granny lifts her hands right now, I did reconcile. We all did reconcile with our father because when you're a child, you see not the vision that you have now. And until you're a parent, some of the things that persons do, we don't understand. But I now understand. My dad did get another job and was allowed back into the home. My mom had to report to the welfare system that my dad had another job. But by the time we were labeled welfare kids, and all the stigmas associated with that followed us well into our adult lives. In the early 60s, my mom's physical body began to deteriorate from the toil and stress life had handed her. Tuberculosis, ulcers, living with the ills of poverty, social injustice, and a society that judged her based on the color of her skin helped speed up the process that inevitably changed our lives. My dad had begun to drink to ease the battles he fought, and there we were, 9 children, wondering from day to day about our own faith. My mom was removed from our home in the early part of 65. She was placed in a tuberculosis center in Crown Point, Indiana, for treatment. My dad's drinking took a dramatic turn during that period. The neighbors began to watch his comings and going. The state of Indiana stepped in and provided us with an aid during the day to send us off to school and take care of us until our dad returned home from work. It looked like we were going to make it, but most of you know the history of what can happen to a family when the mom isn't present. You hear about it, but I personally know the destructiveness associated with alcoholism. Another book, another chapter. We're going to stop right there because, as I said earlier, we're going to read this in 2 parts. It's not a feel sorry for Granny's story. I shared this in the book and I'm sharing it with you, Grannies, because reality will teach you that there are things that we go through sometimes that it's hard for persons to understand. Take these glasses off. There you go. We didn't understand a lot of things back then. Me and my siblings, we didn't. And we had not been introduced to forgiveness like we were when we got to be older adults. And I may be able to help somebody and let you know that sometimes persons do things and you want to question them. And at that time, the system came in and made a lot of changes in our lives. And so when we were um, taken, what can you do? And so I know this chapter is about uh, no name on my birth certificate, and we'll get to that when we start reading the other part. I just wanted to give you a little synopsis of what was going on during that time when I decided to apply for a passport. And so history is important to me, grannies. Whoever's listening to me, have to know your history, have to know your story so you can move past what's going on. Uh, Took the hat off. So I hope that you'll stay with me so you can hear the rest of what transpired. Um, Eventually, I did get a birth certificate with my name on it, but it took some working around the system because, as I said, my mom passed away in 1966, didn't have an advocate to help me plead that cause. I was 15 when she passed away. Didn't apply for a passport till I got into my 20s, 30s. And we did have a person that stepped in and was able to help correct that. So, no name on my first birth certificate. I never thought that something that minute would make me feel bad. But as you see, all it said was female infant Greer. And I'm saying, the rest of my siblings got their name. How come I didn't get my name? You think all kind of crazy things until you mature. But I'm very grateful, very thankful. Granny can raise her hands because her name is on her birth certificate. With that said, please subscribe, please share, please join us next Monday for the second half of chapter 3. I thank everybody that has been with us, that's continually watching and sharing, because I believe if you stick with us to the end, you'll hear something that'll bless you. This has been a wonderful Monday night. I'm so grateful to be alive, so grateful to be here with you and to share. This is Granny's Old Hands saying uh, Facebook, YouTube, like us, share, and remember to put your hands up, Granny. Put your hands up, Granny. Put your hands up, Granny. And I believe the more you put your hands up, Granny, you'll begin to see it's not so bad after all. Things do change. Things change in my life, and they're continually changing in my life. And the best part about this, Granny, secretly, you can raise your hands, and nobody has to know. This is your ammunition, Granny. Secretly, you can raise your hands. Secretly, you can cross your hands and get through whatever's going on. This is Celestine Stark saying, so glad that I'm still here, and we look forward to sharing with you again next Monday night. Thank God that, as far as we know, our trick-or-treaters were safe last night. Thank God for each city, each neighborhood that they visited, that nothing happened to them. Thank God for our babies, grannies. We got to start interceding for our babies because we can do it as we lift our hands. See you next week. God bless. Bye. This is Granny saying, see you. Wait a minute. Let's put the bling back on. These grandkids and kids bought me all these hats, so I figured if they bought them, and since tonight was special, since we're talking about the birth certificate, I needed to look sharp. Got my pearls. Look at the glasses. Can you believe this? They making all kind of stuff to get your money. And Granny just buying into it. Have a good night. God bless you. Thank you.